Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's been a minute, but it's another episode of Film Streak. My name is Rob, and what I do is I watch new movies. If you're checking this out, it's been a minute since the last episode. Yeah, I know. And I think this is just the more relaxed schedule I'm on. I know I've been saying that for a few episodes, but it's just what we're doing now. It's a lot of other things that are happening, and it's been fun. It's given me time to watch a lot of movies here and there. A little less of a tight schedule, but it's actually allowed me for the time, the opportunity to do some other things. And one of those things I'll talk about in a future episode. But for right now, I wanted to kind of recap some movies that I saw over the last couple of months, maybe. And I really just wanted to get to one film in particular this episode, and you'll know what it is if you see the title or you read what this episode is. It's One Battle After Another. And it's a film that, I have so many things to say about it. I have so many thoughts about it. And right away, I've seen so many videos and pieces on it. There's plenty to talk about, plenty to dissect and to enjoy and to reflect on what the film is, what the film is saying, what it means right now. Before I do that, though, I just want to get to some other films that were kind of leading me in this direction, I guess, but I didn't know it at the time. I'm going way back here to August of this year. I saw this film called A Working Man, which, if you know what it is, it's a film with Jason Statham. It's directed by David Ayer, and it's one of those films that I feel like we just had. I feel like I just saw this film, and it was called The Beekeeper, and it was called Taken, and it was called plenty of other films. And somehow this same film kind of keeps getting remade, and it's just different variations on the theme. But I wanted to see this because I thought, well, I really just like a lot of what David Ayer has done in the past. And I really want to see him make films that have his style, his sort of, not aesthetic, but his like narrative style. The way his characters talk, the way his stories play out, the sort of depths that he'll go to show us worlds and cultures that we don't always really get to see on film, right? I like that. This film, I think it has like little elements of that somewhere here and there, but it's not a great film. And I'm such a fan of Michael Pena. And seeing him in this film playing a working man, just like a regular guy. Part of me just has to, I guess the hot take with this film for me is that, hey man, why couldn't Michael Pena be the hero of this film? He's the actual working man in this movie. And I'm such a fan. I've liked almost everything I've seen him in that I can think of. And I feel like, yeah, man, let's break expectations. Let's make Michael Pena the badass. Let's make him the hero of the film. Why is he the one that's kind of getting just, sidelined for the action star to come in? That's my take on it. Do with that what you will. When I saw that film, I thought, all right, well, I've seen a lot of this before. But, I did an episode about this not too long ago, really, where it kind of seemed like that thing of, it kind of started with Taken, I think. And I know there have been other films that have done it too. But the thing of the really sort of prestigious actor taking on this little more genre, crime drama, thriller type of work. And so the approach that I thought was, all right, let me see. I don't really want to go into like, let's look at actors that have done this kind of film. Let's just look at these types of films. Another one I saw here was Last Seen Alive with Gerard Butler, who has already been in this territory. He's already swam in these waters. And this film, Last Seen Alive, the first thing I thought of, I mean, just the way it starts out, it feels a lot like The Vanishing, and I say that because The Vanishing to me is the film with Jeff Bridges, Kiefer Sutherland, and Sandra Bullock. Like that's the version I know. I've never seen the original version of it, which I think is like a Swedish film, I think. So that's on my list. That's still coming up. But Last Seen Alive starts pretty much with the same premise. Like a couple on the road on a trip, they stop at a gas station, the wife goes in, she doesn't come out. She just disappears from this gas station, and the husband somehow is just totally clueless to it. And he goes on the journey of trying to figure out what happened to her, where did she go, and what is going on. And it kind of plays out the way you would expect. If you've seen this film before, you know where it's kind of going. It does throw a few curveballs along the way, but the thing that I kind of took away from it was it felt really like low grade, like the production quality of it, or maybe it's the camera work, or something just didn't feel up to par. As like if I would have seen this in the theater, I definitely would have been disappointed. It felt like a Lifetime TV movie or something. It just didn't. It didn't feel like this was something that people were taking as seriously. Not that they look. I know people take films seriously when they're making them and when they're trying to get them done, but there's just something about this that it just rings hollow. It's like you can see the acting, you can see the camera work, you can see the editing, you can just see it. It should be like invisible. It should feel organic, I think. So this was a real, I mean, it really kind of took me aback. I was like, this is kind of surprising, like how just not impressive this movie is. And, like I said, I think it starts with a premise. And if your premise is shaky, or if it's something that we've seen this already a dozen times, you've kind of got to go the extra mile when it comes to everything else then, right? It's a little like overcompensate in a way. This, I felt like, well, the idea is kind of worn out, and we're just gonna give it half effort, and this is what you end up with. So going from those two films, I said, all right, I got to see something more current, something that's really up to date. And I got to a couple of films here, Eenie Meanie and Novocaine. And these aren't really the same type of story. They're kind of in the territory. Eenie Meanie is interesting. I think it's like a Hulu original or exclusive or whatever. And the main character in this is it's played by Samara Weaving, who I don't really think I know from anything, or not much. I think I've seen her in a couple of films. Maybe I've talked about them on here. I don't remember, but here there's something very interesting about her character in this. She's a woman who, we see her as a teenager. She kind of inadvertently becomes like a getaway driver because her parents are drunk one night, and then they're holding, and they're about to get pulled over, and she's kind of confronted with like, I got to get us out of here. And she's like 15 years old, driving the parents' car, and thus begins a life of being a getaway driver. And this film, it takes that sort of beginning, and her character now as a young woman is out in the world, kind of has her own reputation for being involved with things, and her boyfriend or ex-boyfriend gets into a bind, and he's in a bad place. Like he's got heat on him, he's just got a lot going on. And so she has to kind of come in and get him out of trouble, kind of get a job done in order to make all that, to kind of clear him up. And that involves her driving skills. It involves her kind of maneuvering and negotiating with some of the other powers at play, whether that's Marshawn Lynch of all people. I didn't know he was acting now. It's cool. But and then Andy Garcia, who dials it up for sure in this film. It's interesting to see Andy Garcia play like the real cool and calculated the bad guy or the tough guy. But here he takes it to 11. And sometimes it's kind of fun, it's kind of funny, but other times it's like, bro, you just bring it down. You don't need that right now. Put the big guns away. But the main thing of this film is that it's something that it tapped into something I actually enjoy with films, and I don't feel like I see it as much or enough anymore, which is just a lot of fun car action. Like chase scenes, stunts, just wild driving, and the way it's filmed and edited and put to music. I feel like when that's done well in a movie, it can be a lot of fun to watch. For me personally, it's just something I get a kick out of. Going all the way back to, the car chases of the 70s and all the way through to like even the Fast and the Furious films. Okay. It's just something I just enjoy. I like driving. I like cars. I like watching cars and people driving them on film. And this one, Eenie Meanie, really does a fun job with that. It kind of reminds me a little bit of, if you ever saw the Dukes of Hazzard like remake or reboot or whatever from like I think it was like mid 2000s, late 2000s. And, that film, it's not really that great. It's mostly a comedy, but where the car stuff comes in, it like really excels. And it's like, damn, I almost want to watch the movie just for those scenes. The rest of it I could kind of do without. This is kind of like that. I mean, the story and the characters and all that, it's got its own sort of thing going on, but like just some of the car stuff is just fun to watch. And, that doesn't make it, that's not grounds for calling it a good movie or a great movie, but it at least is enjoyable. It's entertaining for me personally. So, I was kind of okay with it. The takeaway for me was maybe more Samara Weaving. Like I want to kind of see more of what she's done now. And I feel like this is a real specific character, a specific energy she has here. It's kind of like annoyed, but also it's funny. And I don't know if that's the kind of film she's done before or this is really new territory. I don't know. I just want to find out more. I want to see more of what she's done. The other film here, Novocaine, this is starring Jack Quaid, who from The Boys to Scream and I don't know, maybe a couple of other movies, has really kind of found a lane here. And this one, Novocaine, it's squarely in that territory. Like this, the premise here is that his character, he's a young guy, he works at a bank, he's like an assistant manager or something. And turns out he has some sort of genetic condition or whatever disorder that he can't feel pain, right? So one day the bank is getting robbed. A girl that he's kind of fallen for, played by Amber Midthunder, who is really like doing something in this film. I'll talk about that in a minute. But he kind of gets caught up in it. She gets taken hostage and he's got a thing for her, so he wants to make sure she's okay. He goes to like basically chase after the guys and find them and find her and get her back. Make sure she's okay. All along that way, he's encountering every possible situation where not feeling pain would be ideal. From getting into fights, getting into like a car chase, getting tortured, just any possible thing where that would be your superpower and it would really work right now. That's kind of where the filmmakers here put him through that gauntlet. And of course, a film like that, a story like that, it just begs for the most graphic and depraved sort of violence and brutality that you could show. Because what's the point of having a character that can't feel pain if you're not going to dish out some pain on him? And yeah, the film is pretty brutal. It's it's funny. It's played for laughs and everything, and it's played for the sort of ironic premise of it all of here's a guy who can't feel pain, so hurt him all you want to, or let's see how much he can hurt you back. Why not, right? Why not do that? So the film really does go there, and it gets pretty rough. It's funny in some parts. Other parts, I feel like you kind of went too far, and that's where I feel like, yeah, we're in boys territory. The boys, where that show, that whole like story of that show, is about extremes and extremism, right? And this has some of the DNA of that. I gotta say, I don't know if that's because we're just talking about the same actor involved with it, but it feels very much like in that lane. Like if you like that style of storytelling that involves a lot of violence, a lot of graphic gore, and to where it's played for laughs and it's played for amusement versus horror or shock, then this is, I think, where this film is supposed to land. The thing that kind of brings it back in a different direction, which I wasn't expecting, is Amber Midthunder, who really kind of just tiptoes into the film at the beginning. Like you don't really suspect much. You kind of feel like, oh, she's going to be the damsel in distress at some point, but it's played kind of, she plays it well enough that you don't suspect what's coming at the end of the film or midway through the film, where she is actually involved with all of this. And there's a turn somewhere in there that it's kind of hard to read, because she starts out, she's just a young woman, works at the bank. She kind of strikes up a relationship. She's very friendly. And then there's a point where all this goes down. She gets caught up in it. And then there's a point where it's revealed, she reveals, oh, she knows all this. She knows the people involved. She's been a part of this whole plan. And then it turns back the other way. By the end of the film, they're back together. He's not quite as disturbed by the fact that she basically set some of this up, put him through all this. He's still down for it, I guess. And she's not like, oh, I was involved, I got to run away. Like it's a strange thing going on in the film. And I don't know, to me it's like it's just this side of believable, right? It's if one note or one scene or one line of dialogue would have been different, I would have been like, oh, this is all BS. So it's a very thin, delicate line this film tries to walk. I don't know if it works for everybody. I kind of enjoyed some of it. I kind of was just exhausted by some of it. But it's an interesting experiment, I guess. The next film I saw here was a film called In the Land of Saint and Sinners. Or I'm sorry, In the Land of Saints and Sinners. And this is a film that it stars Liam Neeson. So first of all, I'm like, all right, well, I guess this is where we're going. This is what I was talking about. And this is starting to kind of swing out into a different territory now. Okay, this is not a film about a man trying to find somebody and, taking revenge on everybody, right? This is not Taken set in the 70s. This is a very different type of film. The thing is, it starts to take me, as I was watching these, in a different direction of like, okay, here's Liam Neeson. He's a retired hitman, right? And he's kind of had to come out of this retirement to handle some of these IRA bombers who were basically kind of going too far, if that's the right way to put it. I mean, they're bombing, so it's already too far, but it was getting out of hand. And so here we have this. It's really actually a pretty quiet film, and the real standout here. I mean, there's a lot of great actors in the film. Even Jack Gleason, who I hadn't seen since Game of Thrones, which was, what did that end, like 10 years ago now? And here looks nothing like Joffrey. Really was kind of unrecognizable for a while. And I kept watching the film thinking, I know who this is. I've seen this guy in something before. Oh, yeah, I saw him as a blonde kid in a fantasy world with dragons. So it was really convincing, like, that I didn't have to, like, bring any baggage right away to who this kid is or who the character is. But aside from that, Carrie Condon in this film is doing some work. Like, legit. I mean, I remember she was in Banshees in Inisherin and played a very specific kind of role in that film and a type of character. But seeing her in F1 earlier this year, it really changed some perspective on, like, oh, okay, she's got some different gears. I just hadn't seen them. And was just magnetic to watch, but also had like a sort of sense of humor about it in that movie, in F1, right? And in this film, oh man, she is like next level. I was really impressed with like the other gears that she found. Like the sort of ruthlessness and the chilliness that she brings to the character in this film. Oof, it's surprising, but it's just entertaining to watch. And so for Liam Neeson being kind of top billing, I mean, he's kind of the protagonist in it, but a lot of this has to do with Carrie Condon's character and the sort of all the other things that are happening around him. And he's trying to make his way through it and survive. And so, it's also a period piece. So it's sort of different than some of these other films. But I think it's interesting that for me, I guess, like seeing stories about this time period in this part of the world with these things that were happening with the IRA and all that, I feel like I've not seen a lot of, or I've not seen enough of. And so when a film like this comes along, set in this sort of world, I'm interested. I'm curious. And so I was impressed with this. I feel like it really flew under the radar. Like this came out in 2023, and I just happened to see it, like I said, a month ago or a couple months ago. So, and that brings me to the last film, not the last film, the next film I want to talk about, which is One Battle After Another. And that's a film that, like I said earlier, there's plenty of things out there, plenty of content, if you want to call it that, of people talking about this film. And with good reason. I mean, it's an amazing film. I think the thing that really, I want to say surprised me, even though it shouldn't have, I guess, is that this is a film from Paul Thomas Anderson. I had really kind of put Paul Thomas Anderson in a certain lane. I mean, you think of another Anderson, I guess, Wes Anderson. His films live over here, right? His films to see them. The types of stories that he's going to tell. The type of characters that he's going to have in his films. And you just kind of generally have a sense, walking in, what you're going to get. And with Paul Thomas Anderson, I felt like it was great to see the evolution of a filmmaker, of an artist, from Hard Eight to Boogie Nights, all those films through to Phantom Thread. And you see a filmmaker who is maturing and tackling different themes and different time periods and different types of characters, and sometimes hard to digest characters and themes. And the Phantom Thread to me was probably the most of that, where like this feels so removed from anything I know or can relate to or maybe even understand, just because of the time period, because of the place, the setting of it, even the characters. There's so much intricacy with those characters and the relationships in that film that I just felt like that's not a life I know. It's not even a culture I know. The world of fashion and what's it like design and not design. I take that back, but the idea of living in that world, even though that's like somewhat adjacent to my own personal like career and field, I don't live in that world. I can relate to things and I can identify with some things in it, in the story, but I don't live in that culture. So I really kind of said, well, Paul Thomas Anderson, okay, man, you're over here now, and that's cool. And I can appreciate the craft and the intent. It's just not something I really, really enjoy that much anymore. And so this was really something different. And there's something I left out. You know what it is. I'll talk about it in a second. This was something that, one, was surprising because it felt like a little bit of like a throwback to the days of Magnolia, or maybe even Boogie Nights, where this film, it feels so propulsive, like it is moving all the time. There's really not a lot of points in the film where it just kind of stops and sits. It does have some lulls in it, but I feel like once this film gets going, I take it back. There's like two parts to the film. There's the opening sort of, I don't know, it's probably like 10, 15 minutes where you see these characters at a younger age, and then the film jumps. I think it's like 16 years or 14 years. It jumps in time to where you see all these characters at an older age and things have changed for them. But even with that break in the middle, the film moves. It just has its own energy that it's going off of. And the other thing is, like, it feels muscular. Like, it feels like, oh, dude is flexing. Like, for real. Like, he's got Blackhawks in this bitch. Like, it is a lot going on in this film. And you compare that to something like Phantom Thread, or even something like The Master or There Will Be Blood, which, the characters in those films are iconic and the filmmaking is top notch, but they are slow paced and they are very deliberately like plotting in a way. Like they take their time. There's no rush to get to the next thing. I think part of that has to do with the period that they're set in, the locations that they're set in. Sure, a film about, the days of discovering oil in California, yeah, that's going to be a very slow moving film because that's the way the world worked at that time. Okay, cool. This film, it's the other thing tricky with this film, is it's real loose with where and when we are, I think. I know it's kind of established, but the beginning of the film, that first portion, it feels like it's today. And the reason I say that is because the things that are happening in it feel like things that are happening today. The whole opening part of the film is this group of activists. They are basically trying to free this camp of immigrants that have been detained by the U.S. government. So they've got this whole plot. They're working it all out. They're setting it in motion. They're actually, holding guards at gunpoint. This is the first time we see Lockjaw, and it kind of starts that whole dynamic with the back and forth between him and Perfidia and Bob, or Pat, let's say. And so you could say that's kind of what starts this whole story off. But just the fact that, like, what's happening and what it looks like, it feels like it's happening right now, like in 2025. Because those are actually things that are happening in the news. And, that's the thing that struck me, like, right off the bat, is like, wait, okay, this is different, man. How did he go from making films and telling stories about things that happened in the past in different parts of the world to making a film that lands squarely on right here and right now? And part of that is probably, I don't want to say underestimation, but a misunderstanding on my part of this artist, this master, and what his fascinations are. And so, in a way, it's strange. It's kind of reframing a lot of how I see his films now, in a good way. Because I'm seeing, like, it's not just about, I just want to go live over here for a while and I want to go talk about this kind of thing. It's like, I need to talk about whatever makes sense and whatever is important to me at the time. And so then you can look back at other films and like, why was it so important to make There Will Be Blood in 2007? And why is it so important to make this film right now? And it's about right now. And the funny thing is, like I said, this film, once you get past that first part, we get into the rest of the film where it's several years later. The young girl in the film, Willa, she's grown up. She's, a teenager. She's in high school. We only see her as a baby at the beginning of the film. So we know it's been, I think, like I said, it's 16 years, I think. And so we get the sense of like, all right, a lot of time has passed. I think it's even played for effect in the sense that Bob, he kind of forgets. He forgets the damn password. Like, to what time is it? Right? He forgets the answer to that. He doesn't know what to do. He's like out of practice. He's lost that sort of that edge that you gotta have. If you're on the run, if you're living in hiding, if you're living off the grid, you've got to be, you got to be looking over your shoulder the rest of your life. And here's the story of a guy who just kind of got tired of doing that or forgot how to do it. Because after so much time, I had to think about it. I was like, wait, how could he forget something so important? This is the way that he gets himself out of trouble. Because after 16 years, wouldn't you kind of think like, if they haven't found me by now, if they haven't come knocking at my door by now, I guess it's never going to happen. And so that is where, you can relate to the character of being like, oh, yeah, I guess you could kind of just assume like, oh, that's all in the past now. Like, that's all done. And, the idea that, yeah, those things don't go away. You might think they go away. They feel like they're gone away. But they're out there, and one day they will come knocking at your door. That fascinates me. That is something that thematically I'm really interested in. And so this film, the fact that it really pulls out all the stops and showing this character trying to survive, trying to keep moving, even though he kind of doesn't know which direction to go. He just knows he has to keep going away from Lockjaw and from all the forces that are out there trying to find him. And he has to keep going towards his daughter, wherever she is, because he doesn't even know where she is. And, part of the film even speaks to that, of being a father and being specifically a father to a daughter. That's something I can understand. And I can understand the concern and the worry and the dynamic of all that. There are some scenes that are kind of played for laughs, but it is him in his own way trying to show his concern and his hesitance to let her be her. The point where she wants to go out with her friends and he's like, hey, who is this and where y'all going? And like that's normal dad stuff, but he's got other things in the back of his head too that he's got to take into account, even if he can't remember what time it is. So there's a lot going on in the film, and I really enjoyed it so much, just from the characters. The performances were all great. The big kind of eye-opening performance here, really, I think, is Chase Infinity as Willa. I mean, I think this is like her first feature, and she doesn't play it as like the kind of typical teenager, even though there's a little bit of that energy in there, I think, but she plays it more as like, no, you met my mom at the beginning of the film. You saw what kind of person she was, played by Tiana Taylor, but her character, Perfidia, she kind of leaves the story at some point, and Willa, even though they never cross paths, you can see like the DNA of both characters like lined up. You can tell like that is that girl's daughter. And I think that is both frustrating for Bob and maybe even for the audience, but also it's understandable. I mean, the thing I'm getting to is that for Chase Infinity, for her to play this role that way, like, one, it's spot on, but also it makes sense in the film, like especially with the way some of the things happen. Like you really see the film dialed down into very specific moments and the way things happen in those moments. And it's almost like, well, it couldn't have happened any other way. This character could have only done this. And, there's even a chase scene at the end of the film, which is kind of long and protracted because it plays out over several different beats, I guess. But one, it's an exercise in like what suspense building, right? Of knowing like, okay, this can't go on like this forever. Something is about to happen. Something is eventually going to happen to one or all of these characters. And two, just an interesting use of, I don't know any other way to say it, like using just geography, like the landscape, the terrain, and a camera lens as a visual effect. I don't know any other way to put it. There's a chase scene that's happening in the hills of, I have to imagine, somewhere in Southern California. And the fact that you see the cars kind of going over the rises and dipping down, and you see one car after the other, right? Like it's a chase scene. So you're seeing this, but it's shot on this extremely long lens, it looks like, where you see the deep focus of like one car coming up in the foreground and the other car in the background coming up and then going down. And then you see the camera kind of moving up and down over the rises. And it's such a strange, kind of mesmerizing effect. But it's played out so well because like, okay, this next time something's going to happen. Okay, no, this next time something's going to happen. And then when it does, when things kind of come to a conclusion, you're like, oh wow, that was intense. So, there's so much about the film that I enjoyed. One, of course, the fact the way it was shot in a very kind of propulsive way, has a real energy to it. The fact that its storytelling is multi-layered. It's not just about an activist who's lost his way. It's about a father to a daughter. It's also commenting on a lot of bigger things that are happening like right now in the world, with immigration, with ICE, with just the idea of unrest and protests. And real dissent with the way the government is handling things. All that stuff is happening right now. But there's also other stuff in here too. I mean, there's so many layers to this film. Sean Penn, I haven't really even said anything about his character yet. His character, Lockjaw, is just off the chain. I mean, it's a role that I feel like it's kind of like when Leonardo DiCaprio played Calvin Candy in Django Unchained. It was like, ooh, this could be like a career mistake, like playing this kind of character. And Sean Penn has played some villains or villainous type of roles before, but this one, because it's so spot on in terms of the timeliness of it, the other side of the character that is revealed as the film goes, oh boy, that is really scary. Like if you didn't know anything about Sean Penn in, let's say, in the real world, the things that he's really done for like humanitarian causes or for, just different efforts around the world, being involved. I talked about in a long episode a long time ago about the film he made about Zelensky and the Ukrainian war and like trying to find a way to shed light on that. So if you didn't know anything about Sean Penn and his real world sort of efforts, you could possibly think, oh, dude is on this tip. He's on like some real white supremacist stuff. That's how convincing his arc in this film is. It's just, it's nasty. But yeah, there's so much about the film that I really enjoyed, and I'm honestly excited to watch it again now. Just to really kind of sit with it a little and pay a little more closer attention to different things that are happening, because there is so much going on. One battle after another. This is a film that I think for a lot of people it's going to rub the wrong way. I could even feel it in the theater watching it, of like, I like what I'm seeing. I like the intention. I like the sort of ideas that are on display, and even the conflict, right? Like the contradiction of what you're seeing and what you're seeing the characters do. And yet I don't know if everybody around me in this theater is vibing with that. If everybody really understands what's happening here. Like this is part satire, part comedy, part commentary, but it's not to be taken entirely 100% seriously. It's not a documentary. And I feel like it's interesting because it's provocative, it's challenging, but it's also, it's in a way, it's kind of eye-opening. And I hope audiences and people who are seeing the film really kind of take it as that. It's an exercise. It's a thought exercise. I don't know if it's really the point where I would say it's the best film I've seen this year, but it's up there. It's not big and flashy in terms of like a superhero movie. It's not that. But in terms of like let's say a crime drama or like a thriller, or honestly, even as a comedy, oh yeah, it's got muscle. It's got power in it. And, one of the films that I've heard, a couple of the films that came out of watching One Battle Another, during the film, Bob is living off the grid, and he lives in like a little kind of rundown house, like out in the woods or something. And, it's set today, but he doesn't have like cable TV, he doesn't have streaming, video or movies or whatever. So he just sits and watches old VHS tapes of movies. And the one that he's watching in the film is the Battle of Algiers. That's a film that I've heard about forever. I've never actually sat and watched it. And honestly, I didn't really kind of know what it was about other than the title. So I said, all right, let's see who has that. Criterion Channel has that. So I went to go check that out. And I got to say, it's a really powerful film to the point where, I'm watching the film and the premise is, I mean, this is an old film. It's from 1966. So, I'm sorry if I'm talking about something that people already know plenty about. It's a film about the sort of revolution, let's say, of Algeria kind of breaking away from France, right? And the pretty violent and disruptive ways that the people of Algeria were pushing back, whether it was like just shooting people in the streets, bombing public places, terrorism essentially, to try and throw off and disrupt as much as they could of French forces who were occupying at the time. And so the film, part of the film plays very much like a documentary. Like there are portions of it, especially where you're seeing like some of these like destroyed buildings or people that have been victims of terrorism. Like some of this, it looks like news footage. And I just don't know enough about it. Maybe some of it is. But the central part of the film is about this character, these group of characters that are behind some of this stuff. And they're trying to find their way to get one over and to get the French out of here. And some of them have different ideas about how to do it. Do you go violent? Do you use diplomacy? Do you try and negotiate? Do you try and, what's the best, most effective way to get this done? We still have to live here, so we can't destroy the place entirely. But the fact that the film is so, it feels like you're there in the moment. I think that's the real power of it. 1966, that's 60 years ago, right? So this is an old film. And it's not about the filmmaking. The filmmaking is of the time, but it's the relevance of it and the sort of themes of it that I think still ring true somehow. And yeah, I think it's a really important film to watch if you want to understand the depths and the lengths that people will go to for their freedom or for their rights or just to stand up for what they believe in. And it's done in such a effective way that I understand why it's something that would be like a touchstone for somebody who has an understanding of that. Another film that I saw kind of coming out of one battle after another was I saw an interview with Leonardo DiCaprio where he mentioned a film that I guess he had seen or watched in preparation for this film called Running on Empty. And it's a film that I had heard of years ago. I guess I just assumed it was some other type of film. You know what I mean? Like just some other type of story. Nothing related to activism or, living life on the run. Like, honestly, like I think of the Jackson Browne song. That's just, that's what comes to mind when I hear Running on Empty. But this film, interestingly, I can see how it ties into one battle after another. It's about a family, a husband and wife and two sons, about them kind of living on the go, moving from town to town, because the two parents, the husband and wife, they have a history, they have a past, being activists during Vietnam era. This film came out in 1988, I think. And 1988. And so for the time it lines up, that these two people were much younger during Vietnam and were involved with protests or activists. And maybe got into some trouble and maybe have people looking for them. And the idea that, well, okay, but they have to go on with their life and they have 2 kids. One of them who is a younger son who is really still like in that early stage, but is trying to be, responsible and somewhat, going with the program. The other who is older and a teenager, played by River Phoenix, who, I guess I haven't seen enough River Phoenix films. I could think of like maybe 3 off the top of my head. And here, man, watching this film, it just reminds me, like, what a talent we lost, right? Now, I know this has been years. It's been, like 30 years or something since he passed, but to see him in this film and to see his struggle with having to live this life, being on the move all the time, never finding like a home, and getting tired of it, getting frustrated with it, having his own dreams, having his own ideas of what life should be, finding a girlfriend or a relationship, and like having to potentially get dragged away from that because of something his parents did. There's a lot of layers to what he's doing in the film, and it's pretty impactful. I think the film itself is kind of quiet. It's Sidney Lumet. It's a very specific sort of style that he directs his films with. Not a lot of energy. A lot more time to like kind of watch things play out, and maybe a little more pensive, right? And I don't know if that's really the right kind of filmmaking for this type of story. To me, it just feels like it kind of drags for the most part. But I think what River Phoenix is doing in the film, that's some really interesting work. So anyway, so look, those are the films I saw here over the last couple months, leading up to one Battle After Another, and then a couple films after that I thought kind of tied in some way. Very interesting sort of lane to be in. I don't know. What do you think? Is One Battle After Another, if you've seen it, is that one of the top for the year? I mean, they're already talking about like stuff, like award stuff for it. I'm like, it's only been out a week. Give it some time. By the end of the year, who knows what else is going to come out? So we'll just have to see, right? All right, that's it for me. It's been a little while, I know, but thanks for listening. Thanks for checking in. And, if you want to go to filmstreak.com, you can find old episodes there. I've got a list on IMDb. I'm still keeping it up with all the films that I've talked about here. Over 700 now. We've crossed 700. We're on the way to 1,000. So we still got a lot of road ahead of us. In the meantime, same as always, you know what to do. Go watch something new.